that we have before us. And by going to 2 and 9%, we actually only had 3 years out of the last 30 that fell outside of that 2 to 9% range. If we look at the last 30 years for the 3 to 8% range, we actually had 11 years that fell outside of that range. So this, by expanding the range, it is more inclusive of the historic data. The second major topic of discussion regarded utility costs. The Housing Department is recommending a new utility adjustment surcharge to accurately capture changes in the cost of utilities. And this is including gas, electricity, water, sewer, and trash collection. When increases in these costs exceed the Consumer Price Index, the utility adjustment surcharge will apply to all RSO rental properties and replace the fixed fee that currently applies to those buildings that are master metered. Under current provisions, there's an allowance for 1% of the rent for electricity and 1% of the rent for gas on master metered buildings. The utility surcharge, which we can talk about in more detail to really explain it specifically, we believe is a much more fair way and a transparent way of making adjustments due to extraordinary increases in utility costs. And again, we're available to talk about that in detail when those questions arrive. And we do have some charts which demonstrate how we've calculated that and how we're proposing to go forward with that. Thirdly, I wanted to address property improvements. We're recommending that the RSO be amended to enhance cost recovery for landlords while maintaining the tenant protections as a result of those improvements. So first of all, for a primary renovation program, we are reducing the cost recovery period from 15 years to 10 years. And this pertains specifically to major systematic improvements to a building. So this would be such things as repiping, electrical systems, roofs, really structural elements that are long-term improvements to the building. As part of that, though, we are also building in more protections as part of the tenant habitability plan. So to the extent that tenants are affected by those types of improvements, we are strengthening the tenant habitability plan. We are reducing the wait time from 60 days to 30 days, and we're more actively facilitating communications between the landlords and the tenants in the development of that habitability plan. We also agree with the study's recommendations that cost recovery for capital improvements should be increased. Under current provisions, landlords can recapture 60% of the cost of capital improvements, but over a shorter period of time. We're recommending that be increased to 75% of the cost of capital improvements, but we're expanding the time that is amortized or recaptured to a period of 10 years. So it allows for more recapture by the landlord on the one hand, but by expanding the recapture period to 10 years, it actually would result in less of an impact on the tenant's rent over that period of time. Finally, on some of the administrative aspects of the RSO program, again, we're committed to simplifying the process. As an example, there has always been a provision for landlords to come back to the department and to request what's called just and reasonable adjustments on their part. And that is to take into consideration any sort of demonstrated extraordinary costs that had to be incurred by the landlord. That could be from an insurance situation, or it can be a change of ownership. There are a number of things that can contribute to those extraordinary costs, but that has to be done on a case-by-case basis. And so that's called the just and reasonable provision. I know when I took a look at it, I couldn't understand the application process. And so I think it's very, very difficult for people to avail themselves of the provisions that already existed within the ordinance. So it's our intention to simplify that. We'll be going to an internet application process to make it more convenient for people to utilize all of these provisions. And then the final part of that really addresses our outreach program. We have had tenant outreach programs. We have not had specific landlord outreach programs. It's our intention to provide more outreach to both of these organizations. I believe it's incumbent upon us as an agency to do a better job of simplifying this, making sure people understand it, and making sure that everyone, both tenants and landlords, understand what their rights are under the stabilization ordinance and can avail themselves of those rights. So we will be actively engaged in reaching out and educating people as this goes forward. So those are the major provisions of what our recommendations are. And be happy to answer questions now, answer questions later, however you would care to proceed.
Okay. We've just been joined by our colleague, Councilmember Alarcon, so we do have a quorum. What I would like to do, Doug, is to have you and your staff stand down, begin the public comment process, and then after we get public comment, we will call you back up, and I'm sure there'll be a series of questions. Okay. And I would not be upset if any of the guys here were to give up their seats to some of the ladies, but that's on you. The first person is Larry Gross. As of this point, we will not take any more public comment cards. We've already got about 80. Mr. Alarcon.
Mr. Chair, while we're waiting for the first testimony, I just wanted to thank you for convening this meeting at 7:30 in the morning, and I also wanted to extend the gratitude from my daughter, who appreciated getting up a half an hour earlier to go to school and wait for classes. So I just wanted to express my appreciation. Thank you very much.
Yeah, when I came in this morning, I told Andrew about the conversation that you and I had yesterday. So I want you to know that I was very concerned about you and your daughter, and I could have used another half hour sleep myself. But I knew we were going to have a big crowd, and I wanted to try to afford everybody the opportunity to speak. Again, Mr. Gross, welcome.
Morning. Larry Gross, Coalition for Economic Survival. The key question here is, what relief do tenants get? Unfortunately, it's next to nothing. There's only a 1% rent floor drop, but that's offset by the utility surcharge. Master-mandated utility hikes are reduced, and tenant habitability plan protections are increased, but that's about it. On the other hand, landlords get the rent floor, get quicker improvement cost recovery, meaning higher rents and pass-through after pass-through. This is nothing more than a landlord windfall profit proposal, and it is a roadmap for rent control's destruction that will lead to increasing tenants' burden, displacement, homelessness, and ensuring affordable housing loss. Your choice here is to protect tenants or side with increasing landlord excessive profits and greed. We urge you to reject this and support a proposal that eliminates the rent floor, utility charges, and pass-through charges. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. I'm going to call three people up at a time now. Greg, I think it's Spiegel, Betsy Handler, and Ryan Meninar. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Greg Spiegel, Inner City Law Center. We support the Housing Department's proposal to eliminate the 2% utility pass-through because it bears no relationship to actual utility costs and amounts to an unmerited handout to landlords. In its place, however, LHD proposes a utility adjustment surcharge, in other words, another utility pass-through. On its face, this new pass-through seems more reasonable. However, upon closer inspection, it is still unrelated to actual costs. The landlords have asserted two justifications for utility pass-through. First, that the cost of utilities is not accurately reflected in the CPI. This is false. The The cost of utilities are included in the Consumer Price Index, and according to LHD analysis, utility expenses account for about the same share of the CPI as they do of gross rent revenue. Utilities account for about 5% of both landlord rental revenue and the CPI. Thus, the CPI is an accurate reflection of landlord utility costs. Moreover, because utilities are already included in CPI, a utility surcharge would amount to double dipping. Tenants will be paying twice for the same increase in utilities, once through the CPI rent increase and again through the surcharge.
Thank you. Thank you, Betsy. Ms. Handler, please come forward.
That's all right. Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Betsy Handler. I'm the Director of Legal Services at Inner City Law Center. Among the major findings of the Economic Roundtable study were that 58% of RSO renters are burdened, 31% severely burdened, but that RSO landlords are doing pretty well, or as well as non-RSO landlords. So although we appreciate the hard work of the Housing Department, we very much wish that you will follow the Economic Roundtable suggestion that the floor be gotten rid of. There is no rational basis in this economic climate for a 2% floor. The other really important issue is the double dipping issue. The CPI takes account of utilities. It's a market basket of what ordinary folks use. And to allow both the CPI as a basis for the rent increase and a utility surcharge means that landlords are getting that increase twice.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Okay, Ryan, please come forward. And if you could state your name, because I'm pretty sure I didn't get the last name.
No problem. Ryan Manier, Executive Director with the California Apartment Association Los Angeles Division. Anybody that has a yellow sticker on today that owns rental property or works for a rental property or is a maintenance people, could you please stand up real quick or raise your hands? Thanks for coming today. These are the people that will testify today that they're going through a tough time, like you said. It is tough out there. Vacancies are going up, rents are going down, and costs keep on increasing. The lowering of the 3% to 2% is tough, but I think our landlords are, as they always do, figure out a way to provide affordable housing to Los Angeles. We do agree with Mr. Guthrie to simplify the process. We applaud him for those comments this morning. And the final thing, we ask that the surcharge be added on top in addition to the annual increase. If the utility surcharge is an actual surcharge, it should be added in addition to what the landlords get as far as annual increase annually. Thank you.
Thank you. If I could now get Jim Clark and Vic Varick. If Jim Clark isn't here, Vic, please come forward. And Susie Forbath, then. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Thank you. Investors are the only consistent providers of rental housing. If there's no potential for profit, there's no reason to invest in apartments. Taxpayers aren't going to be doing it, and the tenants need somebody there to provide the housing. To owners, the 2%, 3%, 8%, or 9% ratios or rates are ceilings, not floors. Currently, the more recent tenants are more likely to get rent reductions with all the vacancies around and not increases. Only long-term tenants might actually have a rent increase. Even under the new recommendations, owners still have 25% of capital improvements that they lose on. And that's not counting the interest costs that's never counted in the costs that are approved.
Thank you. That's
Thank
it.
you.
Susie Forbath, and Chuck Betts. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm Susie Forbath from the law firm of Gilchrist and Rudder. I'm here on behalf of Richard Close, who was unable to attend. We represent Los Angeles mobile home park owners who provide 6,600 affordable rental units to the city. The proposed change to the rent stabilization ordinance is based on a report which completely fails to address or even consider the unique limits placed on park owners. Unlike apartment rents, mobile home parks are not allowed to increase rents to market rates upon a vacancy. It puts them at a severe disadvantage. Because they are limited to only a 10% increase upon vacancy, the current 3% floor is already grossly inadequate for them, especially considering that the turnover rate in mobile home parks is only every 20 to 30 years. If the city feels the need to lower the floor to 2%, then we urge you to please provide some balance of increase on the percentage of increase allowed upon vacancy for mobile home parks. Thank you.
Thank you. We've just been joined by Councilmember Jan Perry.
In a few weeks, the rent control ordinance will be 31 and a half.
State your name for the record, sir.
Chuck Betts. In a few weeks, the rent control ordinance will be 31 and a half years old. Almost every section of the ordinance has been changed since the original version, and every change has benefited the tenants. I challenge anyone to name one change in the ordinance that has benefited the owners. When rent control came in, inflation was double-digit, and we didn't get a double-digit increase. It was limited to the 8%, and that's why they put the 3% floor in. Now you're going to change that, and when it reaches 9%, then we will have to change the ordinance again, and we'll bring back the 3% floor and reduce the 9% because that'll be too much for the tenants. As I said, every section of the ordinance has been changed, and one of the changes was never discussed, and that was when the vacancy factor reached 5%. Rent control was supposed to self-destruct, and that never happened.
Thank you, Mr. Betts. Phyllis Doherty and Josh Gies and Harold Greenberg. Good morning.
Good morning, Phyllis Doherty. I'm a very small property owner. I own only 2 units that are under rent control, but I have 4 that I could rent. I don't. They're vacant. Very small. They would provide very affordable housing. I cannot take the risk because it's not just the rent, it's the damage that is done. There's no way that we can make up for that. The rent increase at what I rent for would be $24 a month. It's something that people can afford, and when they can't afford it, you don't raise it. If you've got good tenants and they're paying and they're wonderful to be there, you don't raise it. We're not stupid. We would just like to keep the small people able. My area at Temple and Barney Bay, and we just had another shooting last night. It's deteriorating so drastically. It's every 2 days. There were 12 shots the night before. We can't keep decent tenants in there unless we can keep our properties up. If we can keep our properties up nicely, we can attract better people, and we can keep the crime rate down. This is destroying our city.
Thank you, Phyllis. Yes, sir.
Josh Guys.
Guys, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Honorable members of the City Council, it's a privilege to be here, and Councilman Weston from my district. I'm here in support of the rent stabilization ordinances, and I think dismantling them or beginning to dismantle them would be a really bad idea for the people of Los Angeles. Rent control, I work as a driver. I help elderly people. My income's not that high. It's really actually not the cost of living. So my rent control department has allowed me to stay in Los Angeles and to help people and do a good job. Rent stabilization lends itself to the diversity and cultural and racial integration of the city, especially in neighborhoods that have been gentrified. And it provides a very real and important remedy for the increasing divide between the rich and the poor, which ultimately has degenerative social and cultural effects for the good people of Los Angeles. Anyway, I'm kind of nervous, but I'm really glad I'm here, and thank you.
Thank you for coming down. Harold, good to see you.
Morning, council persons. Harold Greenberg, AGLA. Liars figure and figures lie. Contrary to what the department is saying, you have to look at what is out there in the various council districts. Most owners are not raising rent. In fact, it's the other way around. They are lowering rent to attract new tenants. They are giving dispensations of free rent and other benefits, which means they have to lower rent to existing tenants. A landlord without a tenant is bankrupt. A tenant without a landlord is homeless. It takes guts and it takes someone to tell the truth, and it's time this council does something about it. The RSO has never worked, it is not working, and we've got to face reality. Let's stop looking at the politics and let's be statesmen. As George Norris, a Republican senator from Nebraska, said in 1928 when he supported a Democrat, I've come here to tell you the truth, and that's what we need, not the pablum.
Thank you. Terry Silva, George Nazaroff. And Quasi, you third up. Good morning.
Hi, good morning. My name is George Nazaroff. I'm an owner-operator of A&B Disposal, a licensed contractor for the City of Los Angeles since 1954. And 99% of my business is through multiple family residency. And my costs to operate are governed by other councils as yourself: insurance, landfill costs, fuel, and with the rising costs of operation, it is getting difficult for us to keep operating at these costs without having our landlords giving us our raises. And there's a future cost coming in that the city is planning on franchising the multiple family units for Los Angeles with the recycling and the trash hauling. And that's another expense that's going to have to be concurred by us, and we just cannot keep absorbing these costs and these losses. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Terry? Okay. Morning.
Good morning, council members. My name is Terry Silva. I manage an apartment complex in the heart of Warner Center. I actually have a resident that's been with me since 1978, and with the 3% floor, he is still $200 to $300 below the current market rents. I have several other residents that have been there 20 to 30 years, and they are also $200 to $300 under current market rents. So reducing the floor to 2% would still put me way behind the 8 ball. I have had to decrease rents on an average of $150 per unit over the last 18 months. That totals $473,000. I also have to give away concessions, etc., to get people in my complex. That's another $400,000. That's $800,000 I'm losing this year. In addition to the decrease in revenue, I've had a 25% increase in utilities and a 10% increase in taxes. You are taking away my ability to provide housing. Thank you.
Morning.
Good morning. My name is Quasi Nkrumah. I am someone who falls in the category of a mom and pop landlord, but I'm also someone who's been active in renters' rights here in Los Angeles for a number of years. And you know, today's headlines in one of the newspapers here, the one that sells outside the door, "Renters on the ropes, costs now unaffordable for more than half." Now, I lived in Koreatown when a lot of renters were displaced by corporate developers, and I witnessed the family breakup. I witnessed a lot of the decline in the community. What one of my friends here mentioned about the rising crime rate that came from family breakup when families could not afford to maintain their households, and a lot of times their kids got involved in problematic behaviors trying to help their families make ends meet. We've got to do something to keep our communities together. As a mom and pop renter, I live in the same community, in the same facility that my renters do. We've got to find some new solutions to these problems. I believe our city council needs to start a campaign to put pressure on the federal government to bail out mom and pop homeowners so we can stop this dynamic of trying to squeeze blood out of a stone from our renters. They do not have the money.
Quasi, thank you. Thank you. I think it's Diana Yanez, Linda Kite, Sabrina Simmons. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Diana Yanez. In 1992, I moved to Los Angeles from Miami, and since 1995, I've been an entrepreneur and self-employed in the production industry of advertising. September 11th really hit me hard. Most of my clients were European. Since the beginning of the recession in December of 2007, I am barely surviving. I spend often more than 50% of my monthly income to pay the rent. I hear that landlords are challenged. I hear that. But we tenants, we are in dire straits. When the recession ends and a civilized, educated, multi-skilled, multilingual person like myself can earn a regular living again, then I believe that we can revisit the subject. But until then, we need your help to pay the rent. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Kite?
Hi, I'm Linda Kite with the Healthy Homes Collaborative here in Los Angeles, and a couple of things. I'm going to echo what's already been said by my colleagues, Larry Gross, Greg Spiegel, Betsy Handler, so that I don't have to repeat what they already said. But I think what's critical to understand, I've had the fine privilege of working with AGLA to help train them on the new EPA standards and certifications. And so I've had an opportunity to hear their concerns and complaints about how this stuff pans out. Last thing I heard, if you've got a 20% vacancy rate, the so-called free market should adjust those prices so that we get to that place where you've got the right price and you'll attract renters. I live in Lincoln Heights. I have a nonprofit in Lincoln Heights, and I can tell you we've got boarded up units left and right. We've got vacant units left and right. So I see what it's doing to my community. I think that what we need to look for is that place where we all come together and make it work. Everybody kind of going with their side of, oh, this is really oppressing me, I think is disingenuous.
Thank you for coming. Ms. Simmons?
Yes, Sabrina Simmons here. I think we need to make it clear that what is really wanted and supported by the city's employees to my left here is free housing. That's what you really, really want. You should just come right out and say it. The truth be told, right now, as I speak, there are people, landlords, who are not able to make their mortgage, pay any of their bills, or do any of those things that would keep the apartment building there for housing for the tenants. If you continue to supporting for free welfare for the tenants by forcing the landlords to support them, it's a kind of welfare, you're going to end up with not only tenants with nowhere to live, but with landlords with nowhere to live. You're going to increase the size of your welfare base. That is what you are doing.
Thank you.
I'm Rosalinda Wiesent.
Excuse me?
I'm Rosalinda Wiesent.
What's your name? I don't think I called your name. Okay. I'm sorry.
Okay.
What was your name?
Rosalinda.
Huh?
Rosalinda.
No, I didn't call Rosalinda. Okay, that I know I didn't. Tracy Chavira, Cornelius Pettis, and Michael Farnick.
Good morning.
State your name.
Cornelius Pettis. What I've been hearing is landlords versus tenants, and what I'm not realizing, it's not landlords versus tenants. We need each other. I can't operate without a tenant. Some of them can't operate without a landlord. I think regulating rent is just a grave mistake. In South Central, that's where my properties are, I can ask $1,600 a month for a 2-bedroom apartment all day long. It's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. By definition, I cannot overcharge a tenant, okay? So regulating this, landlords have said, we've taken concessions, we've lowered rents, we've made concessions. Out in Bellflower, you see all the signs, $99 first month's rent, because we're not making the money to get the tenants. We got vacancies. I mean, only people making money right now are people making the for rent signs. And, we have a lot of landlords out here hurting. And any street, I don't care which district you're in, you drive down the street, any block, you're going to see at least 3 for rent signs.
Thank you for coming. Is this Tracy? I wondered where you were.
Good morning, Tracy Shavira, Central City Association. We know this is a very tough issue, and we appreciate the Housing Department's efforts to try and balance the competing interests. At the same time, the business community is concerned that the city has an opportunity here, an opportunity to make it easier for landlords to make investments in their properties, and it's missing that opportunity by making it less attractive to put money into improvements in rental properties. Investors will not invest in units until they know with certainty how and when their money will be recouped. Therefore, we need assurances in the form of benchmarks and an implementation schedule for the cost recovery provisions set forth in the recommendations. We also oppose the lowering of the longstanding 3% floor in rent increases. Small rent increases are a tool in the landlord's toolkit. The property owner does not have to, and often will not, use the 3% increase, but owners must have the access and flexibility that it allows. Please consider that apartment owner. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Michael?
Good morning. My name is Michael Farnick. I'm the president of the California Apartment Association. We are committed to providing affordable housing for the city of Los Angeles, and we've always had the commitment, and we will continue to have the commitment. I'd like to thank Doug and his staff for their leadership. We've sat down with them, and I think we're going to be able to reconcile and get a lot of good work done. So thank you, Doug. These buildings are very old buildings. I own and manage a lot of them. They are in dire straits of TLC. Please don't force us not to spend money on these buildings. These are buildings that have constant plumbing issues, roof issues, electrical issues, and we need the floor in order to be able to spend money on these buildings so that we can continue to provide affordable housing. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Okay, if I could have Belial Ali, Brock Harris, and Barbara Schultz. I saw Belial in the back. Here he comes. Morning.
Good morning. Both council members, Weston and Reyes, you put forth a motion back on May 21st requesting the Los Angeles Housing Department to do a study on the feasibility of the eliminating the 3% floor, and instead they came back with reducing the floor 2% and adding the ceiling of 9%. This bait and switch scheme by the LHD clearly shows that only this committee should be responsible for eliminating the floor. This committee is accountable to the tenants only and should create the balanced tenants, which the RSO has failed to live up to its mandate on that. I'd just like to say that any decision that comes out of this committee today should could reflect the human consequences and moral content. Will your decision help or hurt rent burden tenants? Will it strengthen or weaken their circumstances, and will it advance or diminish any sense of social and economic justice? Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Harris, and Barbara Schultz is next.
Good morning. My name is Brock Harris. I own 30 units all over Los Angeles. I have lowered rents on a third of my units in the last couple years. It's the end of the month. I've received 2 emails from tenants requesting rent decreases. I will probably grant them. I haven't raised rents in almost 2.5 years in the vast majority of my units. Why would I? I don't want my tenants to move. I don't want their checks to not go through. I want them to afford to take care of their units. But the 3% floor is key. Why? I have long-term tenants paying far below market rent for units. My only hope to recoup those rents and get them to even close to market value is the 3% floor. I have a tenant who is a dentist who pays $1,000 a month for a unit that should rent for $2,000 a month. He recently leased a Porsche for $800 a month. It's hard not to look at that Porsche and feel like that's my money. I request that you keep the 3% floor on all the units. Thank you.
Thank you. You know where the people are in these units, but they're making it.
Good morning, Barbara Schultz, Legal Aid Foundation of Los Angeles. I do not drive a Porsche.
Look at the CPI from 1985, when the floor was created, to 2009. It fluctuates from 0 to 5.5%. No wild fluctuations. It was under 2% 6 of those years, not 3 of those years. So what is the justification for maintaining a floor, and how does that help ease tenants' rent burden? But I want to talk about primary renovation. I was on the Landlord Tenant Advisory Committee for major rehabilitation. We compromised on several issues, including a 10% cap on monthly rent increases and having it apply only once every 5 years. Replacing the 10% cap, which was a bargain between the two sides, with $110 a month cap is akin to eviction for low-income seniors and disabled folks on fixed incomes. It's way too high. Allowing landlords to do multiple applications will mean more rent increases and more constructive evictions, which is why primary renovation was adopted in the first place. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Linda Hollenbeck, Dan Fowler, and Michael Morgan. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Linda Hollenbeck. I'm a landlord attorney. I'm also sit on the executive board of the California Apartment Association, Los Angeles. I represent landlords. I'm in court on a daily basis prosecuting unlawful detainer actions. And I often get the question, why do you do that? Do you feel bad? Well, years and years ago, I was a single mother for years. I worked hard. I raised my children. I put myself through college. I worked full time. I went to law school. I purchased rental property. And I had a tenant who didn't want to pay me my rent. And I had a mortgage to pay. And this person thought, when you own property, you are rich. I was going to lose that property. I had to feed my children. So I went down to the courthouse and I learned why I had no rights to my own property until I evicted that person. I now do this for a living, but this is what put me in that direction. When I did everything right, and I'm the one who has to pay that mortgage, who should win? And it shouldn't be a landlord versus a tenant, but I did everything right. I did what I was supposed to do. I went to school. I raised my family. Do not lower that 3%. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Dan Fowler. I represent the Apartment Owners Association of California. We're the largest individually organized group of apartment owners in the state. We've never been talked to, by the way, and we're the largest group of owners in the state. The surveys that you base your information on, and that you guys base your information on, is false and misleading. Number one, when a survey is done in the apartment industry, that survey is done of large buildings. So those vacancy surveys that you're reading and those rental surveys that you're reading are from the big professional owners. They're not from the mom and pop. So remember that when you're looking at the statistics that you gather, and gather them. Number two, apartment owners are not suffering. This is something you might guys want to look into before the Los Angeles Times comes down on you. You have 1,600 apartment buildings in the REAP program. We call it the RAPE program. And if the LA Times gets into it, they're going to call it the same thing. It's totally unfair. You rape the owners. You cut the rents in half, and then you guys collect the rents and keep the money. That's criminal. It's criminal, you guys. Come on. Take a look at it.
Thank you. Michael. Morning.
Good morning. Michael Millman, M-I-L-L-M-A-N. I'm an owner on CD11 and CD5. Well, let's start at the very beginning. I'm going to give the report an A+ for style. And I want to thank Andrew and others from your office for helping. But as to content members, I have to say no passing grade, but I'm willing to meet with you. I'm willing to meet with you so they can rewrite it. There are two glaring errors in the report. Number one, they're using funny numbers for the CPI. They're not giving you pure CPI over the last 30 years. They're using a formula where they go back 2 or 3 years and then they give you an average. Be careful of page 3, which is the centerpiece. Those numbers are illegitimate. Be very careful. Number 2, in the 19 pages, they never address the huge vacancy factor of 15 and 20% through the districts. I support a 3% floor and a 5% increase all the way along. Remember, water's 18%, sewage is 24, trash is 10. Thank you.
Thanks, Michael. Al Sabo, Linda Valverde, Nicholas Damon, I think it is. Damon. Al.
Good morning. I'm Al Sabo, a retired tenant in Los Angeles. Once again, I hear these landlords spewing their chicken little, the sky is falling mentality. Nothing is even close to the truth. This gentleman talks about being raped on rape. Let me tell you, if your building is placed on rape to begin with, you don't even deserve to be a landlord. There are reasons why those buildings are placed on rape. Over and over, I hear how bad they have it. Well, gee, 2%'s not enough, 3%'s not enough. Being on a fixed income, Social Security, I haven't had any increase in 2 years, and the last increase I had was only 2%. Let me tell you, after all that's been said and done here, this committee, very little has been said, or how much been said, and very little has been done. This is status quo for this committee. Listen to us. We're the ones having, not them.
Thank you. Linda Valverde.
Hi, good morning. My name is Linda Valverde, and I'm a downtown resident. I'm also a member of the Los Angeles Community Action Network. As a tenant, and as the tenants here, we are not here to ask for charity. We're not here to ask for a handout. We're here to ask for fairness across the board. I work in Skid Row every day, and I see the numbers of families coming to Skid Row. Skid Row is where the shelters are. Children, the elderly, families do not belong in shelters. That is not the answer. But apparently that's what's happening today. And, you know, as property managers, these folks decided to become property managers. We don't have a choice. We have to pay our rent. If we want a safe place to live, we have to pay our rent. And don't forget that housing is a human right. Thank you.
Thank you. Morning.
Good morning, council members. My name is Nicholas Dahman. I'm a researcher at USC studying housing markets and government policy. I also work with the Los Angeles Human Right to Housing Collective, representing 125,000 residents in the city. I'm 26 years old and I'm a renter, having studied housing policy for most of the last decade. It has been difficult for me to articulate words to describe LAHD's report other than bad, cursory, shameful, shoddy, and utterly incomplete. The very notion that this is balanced, transparent, and simplified is absurd. This is not the report that the Reyes-Wesson motion called for. The very term that was used earlier, reasonable returns on their investments, all this comes down to valuing the wealth and investments of the few instead of the human right to housing for the many. It isn't called landlord for nothing. It is not a symbiotic relationship. It is based on extraction and exploitation. The Census Bureau yesterday reported a rise in the poverty rate. We're the nation's largest homeless capital, and 58% of the tenants are rent burdened. This is not balanced.
Thank you. Scott Gray, David Cheney, and I think it's Estelle Tannenbaum.
Hello, I'm Scott Gray. Thank you for holding this meeting today.
Ms. Tannenbaum, why don't you just keep your seat and you come up. I'll make time for you. Yes, sir.
Thank you again. My name is Scott Gray. Thank you for conducting this meeting. Housing is an important issue to all of us. And while fundamentally I'm opposed to a rent stabilization ordinance of any kind because it doesn't represent the capitalist nature of our society, I do understand why people feel that they have a right to housing. That's fundamentally not true. People do not have a right to housing.
Come on, wait, I said at the beginning, no, he freezes down. He can say, he's got 1 minute, he can say anything that he wants to say, no interruptions, and I'll give you a few more seconds, so please finish.
Let me cut to the short of it. What I really want to suggest to you is that all of the decisions you make to regulate the housing industry do have an impact on value, and to the extent that you council people have a fiduciary responsibility to provide for the greater social welfare of our community, let me suggest to you that that comes through primarily tax generation, and a big portion of that comes from real estate taxes. When you devaluate property, you lower your tax base. You cannot provide the services.
Thank you for coming.
Hi, I'm David Cheney. Thanks for having this meeting this morning. Several things. Number one, I do believe that I am a landlord, but I do believe that housing is a human right. However, I do not think it is the landlord's responsibility under rent control to provide this housing. The city of Los Angeles has $100 million in bonds that they have yet to disperse to build housing for low-income people. Listen, tenants, the people who are supposed to be providing you housing are not doing it. When I have been to meetings with these, I think tenants and landlords have more in common than you guys give us credit for. They keep thinking that you guys are going to save them. You are not going to save them. The only people who are providing housing are us, and the housing that you do provide, such as an Vista Angelino, when people make a certain amount of money, the city of Los Angeles kicks them out. And that has happened time and time again. And then who comes in? Parolees. I sit on the board of Rampart, and who comes in? People who are fresh out of prison. Now, they need a place too, but when you concentrate a bunch of prisoners in one place, then you have crime.
Thank you. Okay, Ms. Tannenbaum, take your time. It was good to see you again.
I'm Ms. Stone Tannenbaum, and I have four 4-unit buildings and 1 9-unit building with partners that are not, this 9-unit is not under rent control. I have never raised the rent in this. I don't feel threatened, so I don't raise the rent. In my 4-unit building, it took me 6 months to rent a vacancy. Now I have another vacancy. Hardly anybody is coming. I've lowered the rents on most of my tenants at least $100. I'm helping 4 of my tenants on the 4-unit buildings. I give them food. Some of them haven't paid me their rent in months, and I borrowed on my credit card to help them. Now, I don't mind helping people, but it's government's responsibility to help the truly needy, not us. We just can't afford it anymore. Thank you.
Well, thank you for coming down. Okay, Steve Diaz, Dr. James Bethard, and I think it's Nancy Lawrence. Please come forward.
Good morning, Housing Commission. Good morning, Housing Committee. My name is Steve Diaz, and I am a member of the Right to Housing Collective. The collective has been participating in the review of the RSO for the last 12 months, calling for the elimination of the unfair 3% floor and the unfair 2% pass-through, which the LHD was instructed to do in the Western Wales motion, which was introduced May 21st. Yet LHD went back to the table and came back with a 2% floor and no analysis on removing the floor and no justification as to why we have a floor. Let us remember that the RSO was created to create balance between landlords and tenants, and to quote Haka from the Housing Department, LHD, Los Angeles is a rent-stabilized city, not a rent-controlled city. That is why long-term tenants are supposed to have a stabilized rent. That is why we're here today to say, and the 3% floor, as well as, and this additional idea that we need to have a floor. Thank you.
Thank you. Doctor?
Dr. James Buffett with the Coalition of Economic Survival of Disabled American Veterans and CalLIFE, ILC. I would like to thank all the esteemed gentlemen and ladies from our council person and our city attorney. I'm especially flabbergasted that LAHD would even compose this roundtable without taking in Janice Hahn's recommendation that she had last May in the PRO room, where she brought in the banking system. If you raise this, instead of going from 180 months and you doubled that, it would decrease the amount that the landlords would have to pay, the property owners would have to pay, and this would fall back down to the tenants so that they would not have to suffer the increases. And having a floor, period, is a total heinous when any kind of action takes place in this manner. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Doctor. Good to see you again. Nancy Lawrence. Morning.
I'm Nancy Lawrence, and I'm active in the Peace and Freedom Party, and I am a renter. All of us must have a right to housing. This is not a privilege. This is a right, and we demand that right. This is part of a larger problem. It's all about capitalism, climate change, house foreclosures, bank bailouts, and the loopholes that the landlords, the big landlords, do to us renters. I'm never used to, as a renter, and I'm on SSI, they're cutting back on my check, have the problem of having all of a sudden 1 month's rent go up like $39 or something like that out of the blue. That never used to happen. So I'm asking you to make the right decision and deal with the problem that there's going to be more homelessness, there's going to be more economic and ecological crisis coming up, and you have to make the right decision, and we demand the right. We demand the right to housing.
Thank you, Ms. Lawrence. Clint Luhens, David Evans, and Michael Nicholson. Good morning.
Hi, Clint Lukens. As a humble volunteer to my neighborhood council, I appreciate all that you do, that I try to do on a smaller level. This is not about driving Porsches or rights to housing. I have a 10-year-old Honda, and I put the majority of my hard-earned money into my buildings. We're trying to make decisions about a gray area, about a universe that we only have knowledge of so much. I would ask, and I applaud Mr. Guthrie, as I applaud Mr. Obama, who's trying to do a lot and not a lot of time and with not enough information. Have LAHD go back, further study. Landlords should be incentivized to buy the 1,600 properties and reinvest in them, as I have attempted to do so since 2008. Where it was a 24-unit building, I poured over $500,000 in money in fixing units where tenants were paying $200 a month, and they still got a brand new apartment. Please table the motion.
Thank you. Mr. Evans, followed by Mr. Nicholson. Morning.
My name is David Evans. I'm with the Western Manufactured Housing Communities Association, and I represent mobile home park owners. There are two basic provisions in the rent control ordinance that allow park owners to maintain their properties. The most important one is that 3% minimum. The second one is the 10% vacancy decontrol provision. That's how we run these parks. If you lower the 3% to 2%, then there's an imbalance, and the income isn't there to maintain the parks. If you lower the 3% to 2%, then you should raise the 10% vacancy decontrol provision. So we don't have the same deal as the apartment people. They get to raise their rents to market, which we support. When someone moves out, we don't get to do that. A resident moves into a mobile home park, lives there for 20 years. The turnover is very low because they own the home. And then 20 years later, they move out. They sell their home, and they get market for that home. We support that too. There's no limit. But the park owner doesn't get to raise the rents to market. He's limited by 10%. So please keep the 3% minimum. Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Michael Nicholson, and I appreciate the opportunity to come before you and speak. I'm just a property owner. I bought property in the middle 70s. They were not under rent control. They weren't very big buildings. They're small buildings. and rent control came along, and I never raised the rents before rent control, and then when rent control came along, I did raise rents according to rent control. But to deny the floor on that increases is to deny that we don't have any increase in cost of running an apartment house. It's to say that there's no inflation to the property owner. My costs continually rise. My rents are coming down, not to the original owners or the original people that still are in the buildings that I had when I first bought them. By the way, I have at least 8 people in those buildings because I'm a fair landlord. I never gouge anybody or anything else. I keep my buildings nice. But we do need that 3% floor, and I urge you to keep it. Thank you.
Thank you. Alonzo Carriaga, Anna Hernandez, and Laura Quadros, please come forward.
Good morning. My name is AJ Carriaga. I'm a disabled veteran living in Boyle Heights. I'm here to tell you that RSO is not working. It didn't work for me. My landlord tried everything when he found out that I was an activist to kick me out. They had a conspiracy in a room where they figured out how to kick me out. When I found out from the guy that told me, I found out later on that he got beat up for telling me. I brought this up to my attorney. My attorney took it into court and they dismissed it. They came back at me 30 days later with UD. And my attorney said, no, this is not about money. We've tried everything to give them money. And I have walk-in papers now from the sheriff. Seems like your judges don't understand RSO. I'm supposed to be out of there this weekend. Let's see what kind of bite you guys can put back into RSO. There is no bite in it. Somebody doesn't understand RSO besides me. Okay? This is me, a disabled veteran, U.S. veteran. I got drafted in 1969. I served a whole bunch of years. I just got out, and I wound up disabled. And here I am with this, guys. I serve the nation. I serve with NATO. I come home to this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Miss Hernandez.
Muy buenos días, mi nombre es Ana Hernández. Estoy aquí porque realmente me siento muy enojada y decepcionada por todo lo que yo estoy escuchando. Yo creo que la gente pobre sí necesita una vivienda y está en todo su derecho porque realmente es un derecho humano.
Good morning, my name is Ana Hernandez, and I'm here today because I am very mad and I feel very deceived for what I am hearing, because low-income people need support and need housing.
Todas las personas que están aquí presentes, todas las personas que tienen un alto ingreso, todas las personas que tienen propiedades, yo creo que saben que es comer un plato de comida con carne. La gente pobre no tiene eso, solamente están esperando que llegue cada mes y pague su renta.
Everyone here who is present, who is high income and who owns property is living the good life. It's like eating steak, where a lot of the tenants who are low income are suffering.
A mí me gustaría que todas las personas y los dueños deberían de estar viviendo en sus propiedades para que vean en qué condiciones viven todas estas personas. Y a mí me extraña porque el gobierno muchas veces da ese dinero para hacer investigaciones en esas propiedades y yo no sé qué es lo que está pasando, porque el gobierno tiene fondos para hacer todos esos estudios.
I would like to invite all of the landlords here to go and live in the units where we are living so they can see the conditions in which we are living and living in those conditions. I would also like the government to look at all of the money that they have to be doing investigations of what is going on here.
Y por eso yo estoy de acuerdo que investiguen bien todas estas relaciones que se debe de mantener entre inquilinos e propietarios, porque no lo están haciendo. Solamente el dueño se encarga de ir a cobrar la renta, pero realmente no miran las condiciones en que viven esta gente. De verdad, a mí se me parte el corazón. Yo vivo en Boyle High y realmente si ustedes van, los representantes de cada uno de los distritos, vayan y vean cómo están sus vecindades, sus comunidades.
So again, I'm asking really for you guys to do your research, because if you would, and to see what's going on with our rents, and to see what's going into our housing, and all of you should go to the housing in the units in your districts. I live in Boyle Heights, but you should all go to the housing in your districts and see them and what the conditions are that we're living in.
Okay, and if you could have her wrap it up, I'd give her 2 minutes, but it's time for her to close.
Yeah, no.
Thank you. Kasha Wasiak, Mark Wagner, David Plackson.
Hello. My name is Kasha Waziak, and I am an apartment manager in Los Angeles. None of my residents who are paying way below market are low income, just the opposite. Their rents are $200 to sometimes even $700 below the market, and we need to increase these people in order for us to be able to decrease rents for the new renters, in order for us to employ contractors and maintenance and everybody else to run the property. It's absolutely not fair that we're unable to increase these people that make a good living and paying $200, $300 to $1,000 even under the market.
Thank you.
My name is Mark Wagner, and thank you for allowing me to be here today. I've said before that it's not been great for our housing over the past couple years. I run 750 units that are rent control. We've had 2 to 5% decrease in income for the last 2 years in a row. So just to exacerbate that, it is not good. No matter how you slice or dice the recommendation, it's less money than we're getting now. We employ lots of people in our industry, and we've already done belt tightening, and this will be further belt tightening. I encourage you to keep the 3% floor and the utility cost on top of that. Just one last thing to talk about the capital improvement. The program needs to be totally, redone. The current program of passing through 75% over a 10-year period means 25% less. In a recent capital improvement that we did that was over $300,000, it would go from $8 to $6 a resident, for 5 years. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name's David Plackson, and I manage a property that is over 50 years old. And basically, we have residents there that have been there for 30 years, paying $400 to $500 below market rent. We have lost revenue the last 2 years due to the economic state. We have increased concessions, lowered market rents, and if lowered from 3% to 2%, we would lose more revenue and have to cut staffing and cut vendors as well, which would be loss of jobs. Thank you.
Thank you. Maria Rodriguez, Maria Sandoval, Elizabeth Blaney, or Blaney. So what? Would this happen immediately or come back?
Soy María Rodríguez y pertenezco a la Organización Unión de Vecinos y vivo en Boyle Heights.
My name is María Rodríguez. I belong to Unión de Vecinos organization and I live in Boyle Heights.
He estado escuchando todas las peticiones y quejas de inquilinos y dueños.
I have been listening to all the requests and the complaints brought to you by the property owners and the renters.
Sé que hay muy buenos dueños, al igual que no, e inquilinos también.
And I do understand that there are very good owners and bad owners, and the same goes for the renters, good and bad.
Pero quiero aclarar que yo creo que todos necesitamos uno del otro, porque si ellos son las montañas y sienten esta crisis tan fuerte que son los vientos, nosotros que somos los puñitos de tierra que estamos a los lados, volamos más fácilmente.
But I believe that we all need each other, and we can both work together to benefit one another, because they, the homeowners, are the mountains, and when strong winds hit them, they're able to survive, but we are the small little dust that with any small breeze, we are blown away.
Y aclarar que no somos cucarachas, que sí tenemos derechos igual que ellos.
And I would also like to state that we are not cockroaches, that we also have the same rights as they do.
Mientras, claro, podamos pagar, porque no todos pedimos welfare ni vivimos de la ayuda pública, ni tenemos carro último modelo, ni un buen trabajo.
And we are asking us to be able to pay a fair amount of rent. We don't have the latest year model cars. We don't receive, not all of us receive welfare or public benefits. Or we're asking for a fair price for our rent. Thank you, and we do work also.
Thank you.
Así que tenemos que estar unidos. Gracias.
So we have to stay united. Thank you.
Thank you.
Muy buenos días a cada uno de ustedes. Mi nombre es María Sandoval y pertenezco a Unión de Vecinos.
Good morning, everyone. My name is María Sandoval. I belong to the organization Unión de Vecinos.
Y estoy aquí apoyando al que eliminen el 3%, porque todos los trabajos, todos los alimentos y todo el costo ha subido.
I'm here to ask you to eliminate the 3% because inflation and cost has gone up and there are very few jobs.
Entonces, lo que está pasando es que los trabajos no han subido. Todo ha subido, pero menos los trabajos, los empleos.
As I stated before, the cost of everything has gone up except the salaries of our jobs has not gone up.
Estoy oyendo aquí que están diciendo que nosotros estamos pidiendo gratis las viviendas, y eso no es cierto. Eso no estamos pidiendo. Estamos pidiendo que eliminen, por favor, el 3% porque nos está afectando.
What I'm hearing people say is that we want rent for free. That's not what we want. We don't want anything free. What we're asking is to eliminate 3% minimum or the floor because that's really affecting us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you.
My name is Elizabeth Blaney. I'm with Unión de Vecinos. And one of the things that I wanted to say was to remind you of your commitment that all of you made back in April and May to bring balance to rent control reform. The proposal that is being put before you today by LHD does not bring balance. Including a utility surcharge is not balanced. Most tenants already pay utilities, electricity, and gas. And then on top of that, to have to pay the portion of the increase for the landlords is an additional rent burden and would eliminate any benefit that would be received by just dropping the 3% to 2%. The other things that were not included in this report that tenants have been asking for the last year has been the expansion of rent control. That is not addressed. Tenants have been asking for there not to be a standard for quality of repairs and not to have any more Mickey Mouse repairs. That is not addressed in this report. Tenants have also been asking that more authority be given to LAHD to be able to cite for vermin and bed bugs. That is not addressed in this report. This report is not balanced, and you need to have them go back and do a balanced report because housing is a human right. Thank you.
Valerie Kuntz, Fred DiBernardo, Fred DiBernardo, and Jim Clark. Morning.
Good morning. My name is Valerie Coons. I'm a portfolio manager and I supervise over 600 units in rent control. I wanted to address one area in the report, and that has to do with the capital expense pass-throughs and the primary renovation pass-throughs. I personally have been very involved in this process. I managed and oversaw primary renovation pass-throughs 2 years ago, and I've also supervised capital expense pass-throughs. This is the kind of documentation that is required from the sites. This particular process is very difficult, it's very time-consuming, it's very lengthy, and I will venture to tell you that less than 1% of the property owners have accessed this particular format for capital expense or primary renovation. The burden is extreme on the property owners, and the other part of the recommendation needs to be some kind of accountability on the Department of the Housing. I waited 5 months for one answer, and I find that unacceptable.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Morning.
My name is Fred DiBernardo, and I'm a landlord from San Pedro, and I'm opposed to permanent rent control in any free society. But if we're going to have rent control, we need to address two issues that I believe were left out of the report. Number one, our utility costs in the last year have been raised 10%. 90% of the buildings are not master metered, so the landlord is faced with bearing the burden of the water and outside lights themselves. So the 3% is low to begin with and actually needs to be able to have a provision so it can be raised. The second issue would be there's many landlords that have owned their property for many, many years, and they've been kind to keep the rents low for the current tenants, and when they go to sell, they're penalized for being kind and not able to get the rents that the property deserves and should have some provision to raise it. Please leave the 3% in place or increase it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning.
I called your name earlier. I'm giving you a break. Usually I call your name once, and if you're not here, but I'm giving you a break.
And I thank you for that. I was indisposed. I apologize. Jim Clark with the Apartment Association of Greater Los Angeles. Thank you to the committee for allowing me this time. I want to thank the Housing Department and the Economic Roundtable for the report. It's been 4 years. We've been waiting a long time. But as I read the report that came out and the transmittal that came from the Mayor's Office and the LHD, I could only think of one thing. 1 step forward, 2 steps back. Every time I read one of the sections, for example, the capital improvement pass-through, you expanded it to 75%, which was great, but then you amortize it over 10 years, and that just throws it right back out. You added a luxury exemption, which is really, really good, because there are still millionaires living in rent-control apartments, and we know that that's not fair. But the luxury exemption levels are so high, I just don't see where it's going to come into play. Thank you.
Thank you. Nancy Pistole,
I think I was called before. My name is Laura Cuadros.
Yes, well, if I let him speak, I'm going to let you speak.
Okay.
Because I will. I just said I will. I did call your name before, and I thought you did.
Can I speak now?
Yes, go right ahead.
I'm going to need translate. Oh, okay. Bueno, mi nombre es Laura Cuadros. Yo vengo con la Unión de Vecinos. Somos una organización parte de la coalición La Vivienda es un Derecho Humano.
My name is Laura Cuadros. I'm here with the Unión de Vecinos y la Coalición de Derechos Humanos.
Yo creo que hay muchos argumentos que ya se han dado en contra y a favor de las proposiciones del Departamento de Vivienda sobre el rent control.
A lot of arguments have been stated in favor and opposing the provisions that are under the rent control ordinance.
Lo que yo no puedo entender es cómo ustedes pretenden con estas recomendaciones crear un balance entre dueños e inquilinos.
What I don't understand is how you guys are trying to get to a balance between homeowners and renters.
El 2% que ustedes están proponiendo como aumento mínimo para anual.
The 2% that you're suggesting as a minimum increase annually,
todavía va a seguir matando económicamente a los inquilinos.
It will still continue killing economically speaking, all the renters.
Porque a pesar de que es un 2%, los inquilinos no están recibiendo ningún aumento de sueldo.
Because even though it's only a 2% increase in the renters are not receiving not even any amount of increase in their salaries or wages.
Y sus decaídos salarios sirven básicamente para que puedan ponerle un plato de frijoles y tortillas a sus hijos en la mesa todos los días.
And their very low wages they're receiving, with a lot of difficulty, it helps them to put a plate of beans and tortillas on the table of their children and their family every day.
Y yo no sé realmente qué tanto puede afectar a un dueño, tal vez comer un steak menos al mes.
And I don't know how much this is going to affect the property owner, to eat one steak less a month?
Hagan su trabajo, creen un balance realmente entre inquilinos y dueños.
Please do your work, do create a balance between homeowners and renters.
No a las recomendaciones del Departamento de Vivienda.
And do not follow the recommendations presented to you by LAHD.
Gracias.
Mr. Reyes, would you do me the pleasure and take over for just a few moments? I shall return quickly.
With pleasure, Mr. Chair. Next is Nancy Pistoli. Good morning.
Hello. My name is Nancy Pistol. I bought a piece of property that has two houses on it. One was for me and one was to rent. If I just had a piece of property with one house, I wouldn't be here. But because it has two houses, I've fallen into this quagmire of regulations just so that I can rent one house. Now, you have a rent increase based on CPI that might cover a utility increase that happened last year, maintenance costs, but last year the insurance on that one house went up 6%. My property tax increase was 4%. I only have one unit to spread out the increases in costs to me. So what RSO has done to me is turn me into a slumlord. If I want to help out my tenant by installing a barbecue or replacing their carpet, I can't do that. I don't have any extra funds. And to go through the primary renovation program, I don't have months to spend and hundreds of dollars in application fees. You're really hurting the small mom and pop businesses.
Thank you very much. Martha Lopez. Next we'll have Martha Lopez, Martha Morales. Martha Lopez, Martha Morales, are you here? Coming up. Buenos días.
Buenos días, mi nombre es Marta Morales y vengo de la Unión de Vecinos.
Good morning, my name is Marta Morales. I come here from, I'm part of the organization Unión de Vecinos.
Vengo representando a las miles y miles de mujeres, de madres solteras que hay en este país.
I'm here representing the thousands and thousands of single mothers that exist here, that are living here in this country.
No vivo del welfare, no agarro ayuda pública, estoy desempleada.
I don't receive welfare, I don't receive public assistance, I'm unemployed.
Tengo 2 años buscando trabajo.
I have been looking for a job for the last 2 years.
Mi vida es bien difícil día con día.
My life is very difficult daily, on a daily or day by day.
Dijo una compañera, tenía frijoles para darle a sus hijos. Yo no tengo nada.
A friend of mine just stated that at least they had beans to feed their children, but I do not even have that.
Le pido a ustedes que tienen el poder para cambiar mi vida, para tener una vida digna y poderle dar una vida digna a mi hija.
I ask you to please do something. You need to have the power to do something to change everybody's life, to change my life in order to have a dignified life and provide a quality life to my daughter.
Pareciera que está rogando uno una limosna, pero se ha dicho aquí mucho, es un derecho. ¿Y los ricos qué?
It seems that we're just begging you for something, but no, we're asking you to please do something. What's happening to the rich? What about them?
He vivido en este país trabajando, luchando.
I have been living in this country fighting, struggling.
Los aumentos, lógicamente, día con día me han deteriorado mi economía, han acabado mis ahorros.
The higher cost daily, on a daily basis that we see in the marketplace, day by day, is diminishing my savings, is diminishing my economic status.
Okay, es todo. Gracias.
Muchas gracias.
That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Martha Morales. One more time for Martha Morales, not here. Con Varnisham? Khan Varnisham? Not here? Come on up. Martha Rodriguez? And then we'll have Bev Rodriguez. Good day, sir.
Good morning. My name is Khan Varnishung, and I manage 317 units in Los Feliz. And I want to talk today about the cost recovery program. Earlier this year, in February, we submitted an application to the LA Housing Department, and we got approval passed. We didn't get approval to really get the program going until August, which is a long time for us. Really, right now, I hear a lot about people saying, it's tenant versus landlord and all that. I really want to say we've been working really hard with all of our residents. And we've been working hard for the past couple of years. Utilities are up, our rents are down, and it's just a difficult time right now. And I just want to say, working on site, it's just a difficult process for this cost recovery also. It's just really difficult.
Thank you.
Buenos días. Mi nombre es Marta Rodríguez, vengo de Boyle Heights.
Good morning, my name is Marta Rodriguez, I come from Boyle Heights.
Yo soy una señora viuda, me ayuda el Seguro Social y lo que me dan pues no me alcanza.
I'm a widow, I'm on fixed income from Social Security or SSI, and what I receive is not enough.
Con los aumentos que nos han dado, a mí el Seguro Social me da $825. Ahorita estoy pagando $600 de renta con $1, 101. Así es que, ¿qué voy a hacer? Lo que me sobra yo pago gas, luz y teléfono. Lo que me sobra casi no me alcanza para comer.
With the rent increases, it's been very difficult for us. Right now I'm receiving $825 a month from SSI, and I'm paying $601 a month in rent. In addition to that, I pay the cost of gas, electricity, and phone. And what the money I receive, which is and pay for rent, and the extra money that I have left, is not enough for me to support myself.
Así que por favor, yo les pido aquí a todos ustedes los concejales, párenle en el aumento del 2 y el 3 por renta, por favor.
So I very respectfully ask all you honorable council people to please eliminate the 2 and 3% floor, please.
Por favor, no nos defrauden, nuestra fe la tenemos en ustedes, por favor, ayuden a los pobres. He oído un comentario aquí de los señores dueños de edificio,
Please do not let us down. We do have a lot of faith in you. I have heard a comment here from the property owners, which is
que ellos no tienen dinero para sus departamentos. Mi hija vive en un edificio de dueño que tiene como 30 unidades. Mi hija paga 1,100. ¿Se imagina en un mes cuánto saca el dueño?
They keep saying that they don't have enough money to upgrade their apartments or to pay their mortgage. In these big buildings, my daughter lives in a building that has 30 units, and she's paying over $1,000 in rent. Imagine how much that owner is getting paid.
Así es una mentira. Por favor, ayúdenos, detengan el aumento, por favor, se los pido de corazón. Gracias.
So all that is a lie. So please, I'm begging you, I'm asking you, imploring you to please help us and eliminate the 2-3% minimum floor. I beg you. Thank you very much.
On behalf of Marta Morales, I'm talking on behalf of Marta Morales.
I didn't hear you, I'm sorry.
I'm talking on behalf of Marta Morales. Okay,
We generally don't allow that, but we will.
Thank you so much. In my humble opinion, we, the landlords, are nothing without the tenants. But this organization of rent control is hurting the tenants. It's not fair. It's not talking about the 3%, the 1%, and they ate everything. If we have more rent control, people will be paying less than market value because of the economy. It's not fair for somebody that has been living in their unit for 30 years, been living there in their conditions because there's no way we can remodel that unit. The walls are demolishing, the plumbing, everything, because when there's rent control, it's just like they bought the place. It's their unit, and they only have their 3% or whatever you're allowed. What about the new tenants that pay a high rent at the beginning? At 3%, 1%, 2% is too much for the new tenants. Balance this thing. We don't want 3%, 2%, or 1%, and they ain't rent control in its totality. That way, there are 20,000 vacancies here in LA.
Thank you.
And we need to
Thank you very much.
Good morning. My name is Ben Rodriguez. I am Vice President of SBC Building Services. We are a construction firm providing restoration, maintenance services. We're family-owned, been in business for over 40 years. As an employer that is fighting to navigate through the difficult financial times we've been experiencing the last 3 years, we depend on landlord clients that request our services. We secure contracts to be able to provide building restoration, modernization, and their income and their funding is important, being able to be passed on to companies such as us, that we employ a tremendous amount of people, we train folks, and we are the leaders in being able to help the economy to recover. And I'm in support of being able to create a program that will allow the landlords, tenants to work together, but more importantly, not decrease the income that the landlords are being able to bring in. Thank you.
Thank you. Desmond McDonald, Francisca Machado, Maribel Juarez.
Good morning, council members. I'm a owner of a coastal...
State your name for the record.
Desmond McDonald. I'm the owner and operator of a coastal located mobile home park in the Pacific Palisades. My family built this park from raw land in 1960. Since that time, we've provided reasonable, first-class, affordable housing to anybody and everybody that comes to our property. Our demographics on our property are approximately 50% people of means. By that I mean people with six-figure incomes. About 10% of my total have incomes in excess of $1 million a year. We have mobile home sites that sell on the secondary market, not the sites, but the mobile homes, for between $300,000 and $600,000 to the incoming new resident. Now that completely negates rent control. That means that only people of means can come into my park and purchase these homes from the incumbent tenants. This is, I know I'm going over time, but it's an important issue. This is a very underreported issue in mobile home parks. In the LA housing study, it says nothing about mobile home parks. In the underlying consultant study, there's only 3 pages that use the word mobile home park, but no recommendations nor analysis of what I just brought up is contained within the $1 million study. I'd request that the 3% floor, of course, remain. We do use that for operating. But I also request that all of you on the Housing Committee entertain materials from us mobile home park owners so that you can research this issue more. Thank you.
Thank you.
Buenos días, mi nombre es Maribel Suárez y estoy aquí para decirles que si pudieran eliminar el % que quieren aumentar de renta.
Good morning, my name is Maribel Suárez. I'm here to ask you if you can please eliminate the rent increase amount that you're considering.
porque los dueños cuando va a ser el aumento, cuando ya está dicho que va a haber un aumento de renta, llegan 3 meses antes dándonos la carta.
The owners, when they're told that they can increase the rent, they come to our homes 3 months in advance prior to them increasing the rent.
Pero cuando algo se nos descompone en donde vivimos, en sus propiedades, les decimos que nos arreglen lo que se nos ha dañado, no contestan, no mandan rápido al trabajador, pero cuando va a ser renta, ahí están presentes el día primero.
However, to the contrary, when we need repairs to a service that's in disrepair in our unit, they take a long time to come. They don't answer our phone calls. They don't send the repair person as quickly. They take a long time. Whereas when it's time to go increase the rent or get a rent check, they're there very, very timely.
Y ahorita mi esposo hace 2 semanas se cayó en el trabajo y ¿qué le dijeron? Que se fuera a descansar, nunca lo mandaron al doctor. Así como son los dueños de los trabajos, igual son también los dueños de vivienda.
My husband fell at work 2 weeks ago, and the employer told him just to go home and rent. They did not give him any funds to go to the doctor, tell him to go to the doctor, and the same way that the employers are behaving, so are the landlords.
Gracias.
Thank you, thank you. Olga Solis, Veronica Banuelos, Cesar Hernandez, please come forward. Okay. Martha Arango. Rogelio Sotelo. And I think it's Bennett Cohen. Good morning.
Good morning. Mi nombre es Marta Arango y soy miembro de Unión de Vecinos.
My name is Marta Angos, and I'm a member of Unión de Vecinos.
Take your time. Hold her time until she pulls it. Relax, just relax.
Okay.
Act like you're at home speaking to the little guy out there.
Okay. Yo vengo de parte de Unión de Vecinos, soy miembro de Unión de Vecinos y vengo a pedirle a los concejales que ayuden a las personas con bajos recursos, con niños con discapacidades.
I'm a member of Unión de Vecinos, and I'm here to ask council members to help people, low-income people, to help people that have children, disabled children.
Mi esposo ahorita le ha bajado mucho su trabajo y yo por mi niño no puedo salir a trabajar. Yo siempre he trabajado, pero por cuidarlo a él me he quedado en casa para estar cuidándolos en sus cirugías.
My husband's job is very slow right now. I've always worked, however, but currently I'm not able to go to work because I have to take care of my child. My child has undergone a few surgeries, and I have to stay home and take care of him.
Entonces, pido por favor a los concejales que ayuden a las personas con bajos recursos, que somos personas que trabajamos, que queremos salir adelante, pero con la situación económica y el bajo trabajo, es injusto que nos quieran subir las rentas.
So what I ask and beg of you council members is to work with us, please, and help us. Work right now is very slow. All we're trying to do is get ahead with the economic situation and the low number of jobs available. It's very difficult for us to get ahead, so we're asking you to please help us.
Todo ha subido, la electricidad. Yo pago gas, pago mi agua, pago luz. La comida está demasiado alta. nos limitamos en todo, en ropa, para los niños, comida, para poder sacar lo que es la renta y las utilidades.
Everything has gone up. The cost of everything has gone up. I pay for gas, for water, for electricity. Food has gone up. We restrict ourselves in a lot of expenses. We pay for food, for clothing, for our children, but the income is very limited right now for us.
Gracias.
Thank you. We have Rogelio Sotelo, and then Mr. Cohen.
Mr. Cohen, Bennett Cohen.
Yeah, you're next.
Next. Thank you.
And Marilyn is after you.
Yo soy parte de la Unión de Vecinos y mi nombre es Rogelio Sotelo y les pido que congelen las rentas, que no les suban mucho, porque hay personas como la que vino ahorita que no puede trabajar ni nada y tiene niños enfermos.
My name is Rogelio Sotelo. I'm with the organization Unión de Vecinos. I'm here to ask you to please do not allow the rent increase. There's people that are working very hard and they're not pay for the rent, like the lady who just came. They have children. It's very difficult for them.
Y todos somos humanos y todos somos uno y somos hijos de Dios todos y les pedimos que nos amemos unos a otros.
We're all human. We're all one. We're all children of God. So we're asking you to, why don't we help one another?
Y ahorita no tengo trabajo, a veces trabajo y a veces no.
Currently, I don't have a job. I work sometimes, and other days I don't have work.
Y también que no nos den la renta mucho a los que no pueden y
I'm also asking you to please not allow too many rent increases, especially for those people who cannot afford to pay.
Thank you. So if we have, why don't we let Marilyn go before you?
You can let my wife go first?
That's what I think that's a good move on both of our parts.
I think it is.
Good morning.
You're trying to maintain our 50-year, we just celebrated 50 years of marriage.
Congratulations.
Marilyn Cohen, after decades of activism on behalf of the community, I'm speaking to you on behalf of an issue which personally affects our family. As small property owners, we are asking you to consider the very real problems experienced by owners of older multifamily properties, usually mom and pop enterprises. There are several elements critical to personal survival: housing, food, healthcare, education. Yet only providers of housing have been targeted for these onerous restrictions. We have not required markets to give away a percentage of their food, nor healthcare providers to treat a number of their patients without charge. Society's basic obligations to its population should be spread across society at large, not narrowly on the mom and pop sector of housing providers. We can all agree that more low-income affordable housing should be available. That should be a goal of our entire community, not the small property owners in an already struggling economy. There are tenants struggling for basic survival and others who are able to afford rent increases. Nothing in this proposal targets the needy tenants. It would seem that targeted needs-based vouchers might be a more effective strategy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bennett Cohen, I agree with what my wife said. Thank you.
If my wife were here, she would say your wife trained you well. Okay? D. Weekly, Clementina Montoya, Jesus Hermosillo.
My name is Dee Weekly. I'm with the Housing Right Collective and a proud member of LA CAN. Ladies and gentlemen, as I address you today, eliminate the floor and eliminate the pass-through. It is a lot like, and nothing has changed, what Mr. Alarcon said to you months ago. The landlords are in a position that is a lot better than the tenants are. The tenants are struggling, and it's much like that slide of Raging Waters where you drop off into concrete. What are we going to do?
Landlords have options. They can refinance. I live in a building, the Alexandria, which many of you are very familiar with. And of the 463 tenants there, myself included, we are seeing being priced out into homelessness. We ask you from the bottom of our hearts this time, and we're fighting for it hard because we're fighting for our lives. Don't let this happen. Eliminate the floor.
Thank you. Ms. Montoya.
Montoya. Buenos días, señores concejales. Mi nombre es Clementina Montoya y soy miembro de SAGE.
Yes, good morning. My name is Clementina Montoya, and I am a member of SAGE.
Y soy también inquilina. Yo sé que cómo se sufre porque, por ejemplo, en mi apartamento no tiene aire acondicionado, no tiene insulación. Cuando está afuera bien frío, en mi apartamento está más frío adentro. Cuando está caliente afuera, está más caliente adentro. Por ejemplo, ayer tuve que irme al mall donde había aire acondicionado porque tenía un dolor muy fuerte de cabeza. Un enfermo estando sin moverse, ahí se muere.
I am also a tenant, and so I know how much one suffers because the owners do not do repairs in our homes. For example, in my apartment, I don't have any insulation. That means that when it's very cold outside, it's even more cold inside. When it's very hot outside, it's even more hot inside. And yesterday, for example, I had to go to a mall just to escape the heat because I had a horrible headache. I don't know how a person who is sick would be able to deal with that.
Tampoco me parece justo que los renteros le suban más la renta, sobre todo porque ahorita no hay trabajos. Yo tenía un salón de belleza y tuve que cerrarlo porque los clientes se quedaron sin trabajo. Ahorita yo también estoy sin trabajo.
And so I don't think it's fair that owners should be allowed to raise rent because there's no work out there. I used to have a beauty salon, and I had to close it because my customers lost their jobs, and so then I ended up being left without my own income.
Mis hijos ahorita me están pagando la renta, pero ellos también tienen sus hijos a quien mantener. Y, por ejemplo, yo también tengo un hijo que está estudiando y yo necesito trabajar. Y necesito, si alguien tiene algún trabajo aquí ahorita, que me ayude a conseguir un trabajo.
Right now it is my children that are helping me pay the rent, but this is difficult because they have their own children and their own families to rent. And I still have a child who is going to school, and so I need to find work. I need to find the means to support ourselves. If any of you know where I can find work, I'd love to hear about it.
Más bien necesitamos ahorita que manden a construir más viviendas de bajos recursos, porque ese aumento de que están haciendo nos está perjudicando más.
¿Cómo dijo la primera parte?
Más bien necesitamos que...
So what I need is actually, what we would like is for you to encourage the construction of affordable housing because there is no other way that we can get by right now.
Y estoy aquí para pedirles que no es justo el aumento de ese control de la renta. Gracias.
And so I don't think it's fair that rents should be allowed to be raised. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, my name is Jesus. My name is Jesus Hermosillo, I work with SAGE. And I understand that times are hard. The Consumer Price Index did not rise last year, and in fact, it also didn't rise in 1/3 of the years of the last 2 decades, more than 2%. So that means that even maintaining the floor at 2%, it still results in an unfair increase on rent for tenants. Also, the study that was conducted by the Economic Roundtable shows that the operating costs have dropped over the decades, and so they're now down to like between 25 and 30% of rent when they used to be about 40%. So when landlords are complaining about not having enough money to be able to pay for maintenance, I have a very hard time believing that. Times are hard. I think, my landlord was complaining about how, there was this one unit that was vacant for 6 months, but he still went to Argentina last spring to go on a ski trip, and he considers himself a mom and pop landlord. So what I believe is that landlords are right now enjoying smaller profits, but in the end, housing is a business for them. It is not what it is for tenants. For tenants, housing is the only way that it's the foundation of life. So we can't compare how landlords are faring right now in this crisis to how the tenants are faring.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Rosa Zamaripa, John Milbauer,
Buenos días, señores concejales. Yo me llamo Rosa Zamarripa y soy miembro de SAGE.
Good morning, council members. My name is Rosa Zamarripa, and I'm a member of SAGE.
Con mi experiencia de inquilina, no es justo que los dueños estén subiendo la renta, porque no hay trabajo.
In my experience as a tenant, it isn't fair that landlords may be able to raise rent because there is no work.
Yo estoy trabajando muy poco y pago el 70% de lo que gano, y por eso necesitamos viviendas de bajos recursos.
I am not working as many hours as enough hours, and so I'm paying right now 70% of my income in rent. What we need is we need more affordable housing.
Además, no es justo que los dueños estén subiendo las viviendas por el motivo de que no nos reparan las malas condiciones en que estamos viviendo.
And it's also not fair that rents should go up because the owners are making the necessary repairs in our homes.
Y también estoy aquí porque no estoy de acuerdo con el aumento del control de renta. Por eso necesitamos más fuentes de trabajos. Gracias.
And so again, I'm here because I don't believe that any rent raises would be just. What we need is more jobs. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm John Milbauer. I'm a landlord, so therefore I'm obviously on your enemies list. When times are good, you have studies, so you put caps on my rent at the top. When times are bad, you have studies, and you lower the caps on the bottom. When you have a few landlords who don't take care of their properties, you impose a system to harass us all. So we have to pay fees in order to keep our properties up and to go through inspections. Being a landlord is very difficult in this city. But I try to keep good properties, and I take good care of my tenants. But you guys have a fiduciary responsibility to the city of Los Angeles. And the value of my property, buying it and selling it, is based on the rents I receive. And if the rents are less, the value of the property goes down, which is what's been happening right now. And if you got less rents, you got less money coming into the city of Los Angeles. You need to be responsible for once and stop playing politics with this issue.
Thank you. Did Andrew leave, or is he? In fact, I want to we have a few more cards, but I want to ask the members of the committee. The public comment has gone even longer than I anticipated. Now, what I think we can do, Mr. City Attorney, if you guys agree with me on this, we can hear all of the cards, and then can we meet next week without the comment, just so that we can ask the questions to the department, because I just don't believe that we can do that in 10 minutes. If you want to do that, I guess we do have the option to punt it to council anyway, but I would think we would want to vet this ourselves, and I just can't see 10 or 15 minutes being enough to do that. So because we could have it at the regular time next week. People could come and hear what goes on, but I'd want us to just be able to question and answers with the committee and the department.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I believe that would be appropriate. You've allowed full public comment. Everybody's had the opportunity to speak, so just continuing the item to next week. It will, the public will be afforded.
So for members on the committee, if you agree, then that's what okay, so that's what we'll do. So everybody, we will let everybody speak. Okay, this is up. Mr. Cardenas hasn't said anything today, so I want to, I'll have Andrew talk with the city attorney so we can word this properly, and then I guess when we go to council, well, we'll play that by ear, but I'll find out, or Neil will say specifically what we have to do to keep us right on this. Mr. Cardenas.
Next speaker is Noemi Armendariz.
Yeah, say it again.
Noemi Armendariz. Noemi Armendariz. Next speaker. There you go.
I would have destroyed that. You did.
Buenos días. Mi nombre es Agustina Ramírez.
Good morning, my name is Agustina Ramírez.
Yo vengo porque yo soy una madre soltera, ganando el mínimo. Si ustedes suben la renta, yo no podría dar la renta.
I'm here because I'm a single mother, I earn minimum wage, and I'm here because if you guys allow a rent increase, I will not be able to pay my rent.
Yo soy una madre soltera que siempre he vivido en departamentos en malas condiciones, con cucarachas, con chinches, con ratones.
I'm a single mother, has always lived in apartments that have been in very bad conditions, with cockroaches, with bed bugs.
Yo no entiendo cómo pueden subir renta cuando no están reparando los apartamentos.
I do not understand how you can allow a rent increase when the homeowners are not repairing our units.
Somos mucha gente pobre y así como me ven, yo he trabajado toda la vida sin agarrar ayuda de gobierno.
We are people of low income, and like you see me here standing, I am a person that has worked all of my life and not asking for a single penny from the government.
Soy una persona muy trabajadora, por lo tanto tenemos que vivir bien. Eso es lo que deben de ver.
I'm a very hard-working woman, and therefore we want to live with a good quality of life. That's what you must keep in mind.
Yo pienso que ustedes no están desempeñando su trabajo como se debe. Yo sí desempeño un trabajo, en mi trabajo, con un sueldo de mínimo.
And I believe that you guys are not doing your job the way you're supposed to be doing. However, I am doing my job the way I am told to do it. And having said that, I'm only earning minimum wage.
Así como se fijan en comercios de comida, así deberían de chequear los apartamentos, porque vivimos entre ratas y cucarachas. Deberían de chequear más.
The same way that the food the restaurants are being given a letter grade, that same way it should be done for our apartment units, because currently a lot of us are living with a lot of infestation of cockroaches and rats.
Deberían de poner a un dueño a vivir en el mismo edificio para que vean lo que se vive. No nomás estar agarrando dinero. Deberían de parar las rentas.
You know, what you should do, you should have one of the property owners live in one of the apartments in my building so they can go through and live what we're living through, instead of just going there and grabbing and taking money for rent.
And if you
¿Saben
it up.
cómo dormir entre chinches? Me encantaría que fueran en mi casa.
Do you know what it's like to sleep with bed bugs? If you don't, I will welcome you to come to my house.
Gracias.
You know, Mr. Doug, since I think we're going to have another meeting next week where it relates to this, if you could, when you come back, I think I would like to amend this so that we could deal with a couple of problems that I heard from some owners where it relates to the 30-day notice on the SCEP inspections. If we could look at changing that to 60 days so that they would have more time to make their repairs. And then another thing they talked about was a possibility of maybe a 15-day grace period where it relates to the registration fees. So that would, I think they're due February 28th, and we could change it to May 16th. That would give them an opportunity to get those fees in and eliminate some of these penalties and fees that I think are a little much. So I'd like to, I'll give you the writing, but I want you guys to start noodling on that now. Felmy Perez, Linda Quo.
Good morning, Mr. Wesson and council members and LHD representatives. I hear you, Mr. Wesson, instructing Mr. Guthrie to make even more concessions for the landlords, listening to what the landlords are saying here. And however, you haven't addressed what we've come here to say as tenants. This 2% floor is arbitrary. We ourselves asked LHD why a 2% floor, and they had no answer. LHD's recommendations completely ignore the $1 million taxpayer-funded study that you commissioned 2 years ago. It completely ignores the United Nations Housing Rapporteur's recommendations, and it completely ignores your own instructions to analyze the elimination of the floor. It falls short on a lot of issues, and so you must send it back. I want to remind you that more than 60% of the city's inhabitants are tenants. We are voters. We voted you all in. You are responsible to us. However, when we look at campaign financing, we see over and over AGLA contributions. We see over and over real estate contributions to your campaigns. We want to remind you that we're looking at those. They will be made public.
Thank you. Okay, hold it down. Ms. Crow, and then I've got a Scott Wright and David Friedman. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Linda Coe. My family owns a small apartment unit in Koreatown. We immigrated to LA 30 years ago. It is through hard work and saving that we were able to purchase our apartment. My mother is retired, so she lives off the rent she collects. We need to get rid of rent control altogether. The rent should be dictated by a law of supply and demand. Let the free market run its course. Vacancies are high, so we are actually lowering our rents to get the renters into the empty units. We did not raise the rent on the current tenants because we know that tenants are struggling. By imposing rent control, the city is singling out landlord like my mother, who's 60 years old, who lives on a fixed income, to subsidize their renters. If the city wants to regulate rents, why doesn't the city also regulate the price of gas, milk, rice, or the cost of a bus fare? After all, these are all basic necessities. Why are we landlords being singled out to subsidize others when the city is not asking other business to do so?
Thank you. Mr. Wright, Scott Wright, and David Friedman after that.
Thank you for letting me talk today. I provide low-income housing through a small building. We're a mom-and-pop operation here, but it's almost impossible to maintain our buildings if we don't have those small incremental rent increases. And honestly, there's a law of unintended consequences. When this happens, if I cannot keep in business, then I'm going to be forced to sell my building. And what'll happen is it'll be a tear down, and it'll be sold to condo developers, and then there won't be any housing for low-income people. And my money will not be reinvested in Los Angeles, but it'll go somewhere where I can get a return on my investment. And so there is this law of unintended consequences is so important. And right now, may I suggest that the real issue here is a lot of people are really hurting for work, and I think that there's the real problem is jobs, and a lot of employers are leaving Los Angeles because of the onerous taxes and regulations on business in this city, and it's impossible to do business here. And I really beg that that's what you should address.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much.
My name is David Friedman, and I'm a housing provider here in the city of Los Angeles. And I just want to say that, first of all, thank you for having this forum. But the rental housing problem is a complicated problem, but the solution is not that complicated. It's very simple. It's the law of supply and demand. We don't have enough housing, and a lot of the regulations that are put on the properties with rent control don't help increase making housing, but as the gentleman before me said, it encourages owners who want to get out or find a better use for their property to sell it to a developer. The problem can't be solved by name calling. It can't be solved by I see signs, end the floor, fix the rent burden. My dad was an immigrant. 5 of us lived in a one-bedroom apartment. I watched my dad work hard. I followed in my father's footsteps. I worked hard. All I can say is that if we're going to solve the problem, this is a problem for the city. And where are your partners? Where are the governor, or where are the president, or where are our state senators? This problem cannot be solved by the owners. For whatever reason, the renters think, or the council thinks, that you can put all of this on the back, all this entire burden on the back of owners, and you're just killing the goose.
Thank you. Thank you. Arnie Corlin, John Rodriguez, and Chris Hernandez.
Morning, council members. Arnie Corlin. In the past, myself and others in here have bought some of the most challenged properties around the city of Los Angeles. And in doing so, improved some of the buildings in the communities. I also make certain that my tenants know where there's job resources and other things to enable their quality of life. However, all of that costs money. And basically what myself and others have chosen to do at this point is we've been told by the city of Los Angeles, in essence, our investments are not of value of what we put in. So myself and others at this point are no longer buying in the city of Los Angeles. I would suggest that to encourage us to be able to do so, make a profit, that you do keep the floor. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, thank you.
State your name for the record.
My name is John Rodriguez. As a landlord in the city of Los Angeles, we all know the issues we have with the housing market and all the foreclosures that we're going through. A lot of us landlords are barely holding on to barely able to make our payments with all the increases, with our insurances going up, the DWP always going up, the trash going up. You know, the people who are speaking are correct in what they're saying. You know, we have the same increases. You know, we have units that we cannot rent out, and we have to struggle with that every month and every month. I mean, it's an ongoing issue, but I just want to let you guys know that you know, there's a lot of property owners who are just barely hanging on. So thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Hernandez. Followed by Lewis, I think it's Eisen, and Matthew Millen.
Good afternoon. My name is Chris Hernandez. I'm also a mom and pop landlord. It's a month-to-month struggle for
How many units do you have?
Huh?
How many units do you have?
Units.
How many?
4.
Okay, go on, sir.
It's a month-to-month struggle of trying to keep everything. We have now, every 3 years, we have a housing inspection, which we also have to keep everything up to code from the housing department. And we're putting money into them, and yet I myself, I don't regularly raise rent. I usually try to keep it to the needs of what my tenants are, and I just can't see. If I go out, they're going to be dealing with the banks. With the banks, they're not going to do anything. They either should help deal with us and work together, or they're going to be dealing with the banks. They're not going to have anywhere to live. That's all. Thank you.
I have a question. Mr. Hernandez.
Since you had a few more seconds, it was said earlier that one of the solutions is landlords can just refinance. Is refinancing units right now something that's real?
It's not possible with the value of the property. My property's upside down, so the bank won't do it.
And are the banks lending much money right now?
Oh no, the banks are terrible. The banks are terrible. I've applied 5 different banks. All of them all of them tell me straight out, there's nothing we can do for you.
Thank you. Thanks again, Chris. Thank you. Good question, Tony. Mr. Eisen or Eason?
Louis Eisenstein. I think it's ridiculous after a $1 million rent study, all you could think of is lowering the floor and increasing the fees. I don't know how that helps affordable housing at all. I manage 200 units here in LA, and it's about to change. I'm looking at other cities outside of LA, like Pasadena, that has no rent control. Much easier to manage, easier to give rent breaks. When there's no rent control, you have more opportunities to do things as a landlord, like fix the properties, and you don't have to deal with the overly burdensome regulatory process. I'm going to start selling my properties to developers so they can build condos. I hate to do that, but that's the only option we have as landlords under this ridiculous RSO. So my suggestion is you let us bank rent increases, as the study said. You raise the floor from 3 to 5%. Increase the ceiling from 7 to 10, and give us capital improvement opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you. Matthew Millen. And our last speaker would be Luis Salazar. Matthew Millen. Luis Salazar. Okay. I will get asked for Matthew Millen and Louis Salazar. With that said, I'm going to ask the city attorney to, wait, I have one more. Oh, Raul Godinez.
Raul Godinez.
Okay.
Good morning, honorable ladies and gentlemen. I am a landlord in the city of Los Angeles, and yes, as you heard legal aid out here, and the various tenants groups saying that inflation is just ruining their lives, and that utilities are out of control. They are right. Utilities are out of control. Inflation is very difficult, but we have that involvement. We have that in common. We have the exact same problem that they're having. We have higher water bills, trash bills, electric bills, maintenance costs. For example, a water heater was $150 5 years ago. It's $500 now if it has to be replaced. So if the tenant that's paying $400 or $500 a month in rent costs for a service call, that service call is now anywhere between $2 to God knows what, depending on what she's calling. It's no longer, now when they call, you almost tremble because we are in survival mode. It's not where we were a few years ago. Lenders are no longer lending. In LA, I was actually refinancing 2 buildings to try to get some money for capital improvements. And about 3 days away from loan box, one and we know what happened to them, said we're no longer interested in anything in LA. We will not lend in LA.
Thank you.
They're actually sending the appraisal money back. We were literally 3 days away from loan box. That didn't happen.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, I want to request that the leaders from the landlord community and the tenant advocates inform the people that they represent that we've had a public hearing and that when we discuss this with the housing department, that there will be no public comment at that time. So we do need you to help us get that information out there, because when we meet next week, I can get the city attorney to come up with a legal way to state that there will be no public comment next week. Mr. Cardenas.
Yeah, just point of clarification, Mr. Chairman. So people will be welcome to be here and listen. It's going to be open public meeting, announced and everything. However, the public comment portion will not reopen. That was satisfied today on this matter, items 1 and 2, right?
Yes, we're going to hear from Mr. Alarcon.
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you for holding the matter for 1 week. I'd like to have a crack at changing the view here. The weakness of the Housing Department's report is not in the specifics that pit landlords against tenants. The weakness is that there's no creativity to grow the pie so that the burden isn't falling on the landlords or the tenants. So, for example, while there is a recommendation to eliminate the floor, there is no recommendation to consider things like reducing the tax burden on the owners during the same economic conditions. Why not propose, and I will propose, an elimination of the gross receipts tax under certain economic conditions, so that if we do lower the floor to zero, we would at the same time eliminate the burden of gross receipts tax on owners who make more than $100,000 in gross receipts. At the same time, we would consider, for those who don't meet the $100,000 threshold, why not reduce the fees that they have to pay when they're going through these processes. If we can subsidize apartment units of developers of $200,000 per unit, we can sure as heck support existing rental units by providing them with subsidies. And by the way, since many of these proposals were worked on by the mayor's office, I think that one of the things we need to do, instead of shifting the burden of utility fees to the tenants, why not just reduce the utility fees on everybody? And, I know that clearly, if push comes to shove, the owners are not going to like my positions on the existing report. But I don't think we've done enough work to grow the pie so that the burden doesn't fall squarely on both people. We're trying to solve a solution of minimal resources that both owners and tenants are suffering through by shifting the cost burdens. That's not a solution. The solution to the problem is to provide more subsidies. I would have wished that the bailout forced the banks to require them to provide more loans to the small business owners, including apartment owners. I would have hoped that it directed them where commercial properties are undergoing foreclosure, that more money be directed to provide assistance to them, principal reduction loans to the owners of these properties. That didn't happen, but the city shouldn't fall in the same trap and think that the only way to solve this problem is to place an additional burden on the tenants. It's not. I think we can reduce utility fees. I think we can reduce the gross receipts tax on this industry. I think we can find other resources. I'm going to work with my CRA area to propose a subsidy program for those landlords who are having problems fixing their properties. Why not? And so I think the weakness of this report is it's just not creative enough. It doesn't find solutions. It merely pits owners against tenants worse than ever before, and we really need to find better solutions.
Mr. Alarcon, if I could jump in, our presence has been requested in council, but if you have any of those recommendations in writing, if you would submit them to the housing department, certainly we'll be in a position to respond to whatever falls under our jurisdiction. Mr. Reyes.
Más que decir a los tenentes y a los dueños, gracias por lo que han hecho ahora, por estar aquí. Vamos a tomar mucha paciencia, pero vamos a seguir adelante. Y a los dueños, a los sacrificios que ustedes han demostrado ayudando a los tenentes, también estoy, pues le puedo decir, le agradezco mucho. Just said I want to thank the tenants and the property owners for their patience and getting through this discussion. The tenants who will make the sacrifice to come here, and it's hard when you don't have someone taking care of your children or your senior at home, and for the property owners who took the time to talk about how they work with tenants and how they support them and sacrifice themselves as well to be in this place. So I thank you very much, and thank you for your patience.
Thank you. Now, Mr. City Attorney, you have an announcement to make where it relates to next week, or we fine? We're okay. Now, is there any more business before this committee? This committee is adjourned. Thank everyone for coming.